Hey everybody, I just wanted to share some thoughts again. The last few years have been wild in life, moving from Seattle to Texas and then back again. And I think all of that movement actually taught me a lot of lessons that I was not expecting, but they were super important lessons and things that have really helped me to just grow in some critical, life-altering ways that's really shot me forward in life and in my goals and in my dreams and all that sort of stuff. So I just want to spend a little bit of time sharing some thoughts from my experiences about how to get unstuck in your life. And so since spending time in Texas, since moving back, through the things that I've learned, I have moved into a job that's the best job I've ever had. It's super rewarding work. The pay is significantly better than anything I've experienced in the past. I'm doing work that's super meaningful for me. My family is doing really well. Life is never perfect, but things have changed significantly for the better because of some lessons that I've learned and some steps that I've made and some pretty big decisions that my family has chosen. And so I'm gonna try to keep this as short as possible, just hit a few key points that have been game changers for us. So the first thing has to do with going inward. And so what that means is really spending time identifying the voices that you hear in your thoughts, that you hear in your head, the voices that dictate how you feel about your own potential, the voices that dictate how you feel about your own worthiness, your own ability, and so on and so forth. It's a very interesting thing, just this whole human experience, where oftentimes we hear certain types of messaging, especially as kids, that will grow into our worldviews, whether that be our opinions on politics, our opinions on faith, our preferences in games and food, so on and so forth. But what happens is those things get programmed into our thoughts when we're kids, and then we become adults. And for many of us, we never second guess those things ever for life, and we're basically locked in for the whole rest of our life, for better and for worse. And then we die, and that's it. And so what I mean by going inward is actually spending the time to identify what are the sources of those voices that dictate your thoughts and your beliefs and your worldviews. Are those voices serving you? What's going on inside of your subconscious? And that involves actually taking some intentionality to figure out and to pay attention and to get off of autopilot. And I know for myself, I used to really be afraid to spend too much time by myself in quiet, because what would happen is this thought cycle, this thought vortex, where I would just think of all these just painful memories or painful experiences or fears or so on and so forth. And what I would do to cope with that is basically constant distraction and entertainment. So lots of shows and games. I love me some video games, staying up late, social media, so on and so forth. Anything to keep myself from my own thoughts. And so part of what I learned from my time in Texas, so that was a very challenging experience too, not just transformative, but also it was tough. It was really, really hard. And I developed pretty bad anxiety when I was there. And what happened is all of my coping mechanisms suddenly didn't work anymore. And so I had to come to terms with the stuff that was really driving my anxiety, which is still a work in progress, but it was a lot of journeying to figure some of those things out. And so let me give an example of the type of messaging. So one of the messages that I had internalized that I didn't realize I'd internalized was this idea that I was stuck between two options in terms of professional choices, in terms of my job. Either a job that would be really meaningful for me. I'm very, very passionate about racial justice. And so I assumed that if I wanted to continue to do work that was meaningful for me, my pay would always be trash, and that I'd always be in financial struggle. It was basically, it'd be the negative side of doing work that was really meaningful for me. So I thought I was torn between either that type of job or a job that would pay really well but be soul-sucking. And I wasn't aware that I had really boiled my life down to those two options and was really miserable and in struggle for years and years and years. I had jobs that paid a little better, that I frankly hated. And it, coming home and just feeling like, just feeling terrible because it was a job that I hated. And then I did jobs that actually were meaningful, where I was able to advocate for justice. But then I'd be so stressed out about finances and supporting my family that I would still feel pretty terrible. And so I had to make a choice that I was no longer going to settle for that paradigm. And I had to make the choice to believe that there was something else, that there was another option out there where I could do meaningful work and then still get the pay that I needed to be able to more than survive, more than just support my family, actually move things forward and leave a legacy behind for my children. And it took a lot of work to change that thought pattern, because what happens is when we get locked into certain thoughts, it then becomes our default. And even when we get a great idea of something different, we'll slide back into the default unless we are spending time on a regular basis reinforcing the new message. So that was something that I would do through meditation, through reading, through subscribing to social media pages that were more affirming, that were more empowering, and staying away from social media that was more focused on negativity and more focused on struggle. And so that was just something that I needed to do. And then when I got back to Washington and was looking for work, I actually was offered a job that would have been such a great fit for my skills and my passions, but the pay wasn't right. And I had to actually make a choice, moving back to Washington, no job, family of 6 total people, to say no to that opportunity, because I had to stick with that belief that there was something that was more what I was looking for, that contained those things that were so important to me to move my life and my family forward. So I said no to that, and then I ended up getting this position that, again, is a combination of all those things that I really desired. And then also my consulting business is starting to pop off more too, and I'm getting lots more clients in terms of my equity and diversity and inclusion consulting work too. So by the way, hit a brother up if you're looking for somebody to help out with some of those things in your organization. But anyway, side note. That's all number 1. Number 2, in terms of getting unstuck in your life, is just embracing a radical belief in yourself and in your passions. I guess that's connected to number 1. But this is another thing that's a challenge of living in the Pacific Northwest. Especially in Western Washington and the Seattle areas, we're very, very educated, and we get super hung up with credentials. I have met several people in all kinds of different fields that are amazing, incredible, gifted leaders, but they never actually apply for or try to put themselves up for higher opportunities in their area of skill and talent, because they don't believe in themselves, and they believe that they need to first get a fancy degree or get a fancy certification, and they play themselves small because of this comparison to other people that have these fancy degrees, even though right now they're doing incredible work. And I'm trying to keep that as broad as possible, because some of the people that I'm thinking of might be watching this video. And if you think that I'm talking about you, I might be. But that was something that I observed when I would look at just other people in my life or in the media, famous people, whatever, who were really successful and who are really thriving and at the top of their field, is they all seem to have this very, very strong belief in themselves. And that would translate in a lot of different ways. Maybe sometimes they'd come off a little cocky, or maybe sometimes they would have different ways of expressing that belief that wasn't the best. And then what happens is we don't want to look like that, so we bring it all down. We don't want to look like we're cocky, like we're full of ourselves, and so we go the exact opposite direction in a harmful way, and we shrink ourselves down. And that was another thing that I had to choose to do. I had never had a director title before. But I had to actually make the choice that no, I'm reading this description, I know what the work is, and I am the right person for this. And then that translated in terms of my preparation, that translated in terms of my interview. Not coming in like I'm begging and asking for an opportunity, but coming in like I know this is the right fit for me. And again, that all translated well and has been very great after that. And then the third thing that I want to mention is, and this might feel a little bit more nebulous for people that are new to this concept, but learning to trust your gut, learning to trust your intuition. This is another thing that I think is really hard for us Pacific Northwest folks, is we are very, very overly logical people. And I have come to learn that there are some times where my intuition and my gut sense knows things before my logical brain has come to awareness of those things. And an example of that was this decision to move back to Seattle, the decision to move to Texas in the first place. I couldn't have logically expressed everything out about, oh, I need to go to Texas because I'm going to learn these things about myself, and then I'm going to move to Washington with a perfectly timed, perfect job opportunity. There's no way I could have predicted all that stuff. But I felt this gut sense that these were two moves that I needed to make, and they've translated beautifully. And it takes practice and it takes time to become attuned to that voice inside, to that gut sense, that feeling. And that actually ties in well in terms of this reprogramming of your thought patterns and believing in yourself, because then you start to actually realize that, oh, I had a feeling about this thing, and it knew stuff before I was able to fully figure it all out. And so that's something else that I want to encourage you to think about, to consider, to dive into. Hit me up if you have more questions about that stuff, especially the intuition. And I think the first place that I learned how to get better at that actually was a worship leader at church. To be able to lead people in musical worship really well, you need to be able to have a good sense for the people, a good sense for what's going on in the room, and then to be able to be fluid and flow even if you can't logically figure it out right away. And that practice is translated really well further on. So that's all I have for now. I hope some of this helps. Let me know if this helps. I've never done these types of videos before, but I feel like that I'm learning such new ways of thinking that have been so beneficial to my life and to my family that I want to share those things with you too. So thanks for listening in, and y'all have a good day and y'all stay safe.